Namaste. The wedding hall was jam-packed. The little girl looked around, found an empty chair, and she went and she sat down there. And she tried to watch the proceedings of the wedding. After a while, she looked at the person sitting next to her and she smiled and she said, "Hello." The person responded back and they both started talking. The person started asking her about her parents, her school, her hobbies, what she liked to eat. And this little girl, with a lot of enthusiasm, answered all the questions the person was asking. And then after that she said, Uncle, you know what happened last week? What's it, dear? Oh, last week we all went to a temple. We meaning my father's side. My father's side is big, you see. My father had 11 brothers and sisters along with him. My grandparents had 12 children. And so we all went to a temple. Since we were so many, one van was not enough. We went by 2 vans to the temple. When we reached the temple, we saw that it was fully crowded over there. And then after that, when we were going around the temple, I got separated from my parents. Then I looked here and there. I could not find my parents. I could not see my relatives also. My uncles, my aunts, my annas, my akkas, my cousin brothers, my cousin sisters. I could not see anybody of them. I even went around the temple 3 times after that looking for them, but I could not find them. Then I did not know what to do. Then I remembered one story which my mother said. And so then I went to the police aid booth and I told the uncle there that I could not find my parents. And that uncle also announced my name and my parents' name in the mic. But nobody came. Then he told me to sit there. By now, my parents and relatives, I think they must have reached home. And then only they saw I was not there in van 1 and in van 2. And then my parents rushed back to the temple and I was sitting in the police aid booth with a banana in one hand and toffee in another hand. They saw me and they rushed towards me, both of them. They picked me, they kissed me, they hugged me, and then they brought me home. That is what happened last week. "Oh my," said the people listening to her. They praised her for her courage and appreciated her for sharing the story along with them. And that little girl was me. And it was my maternal uncle's wedding. My parents were busy doing their part in my uncle's wedding. And so they were not around. And I was happily sharing my story with whoever was ready to listen. Now, after the wedding had got over, a couple of elderly people who had heard my story, they wanted to go and talk to my parents and express their concern about what had happened to me. So they went to my parents and they told all that they had told them. And my parents just stood flabbergasted. They listened with their eyes popping out and their mouths wide open. They were absolutely clueless of what they were telling them. Because neither had we gone to the temple, nor had I got lost anywhere. So yes, that was my first live storytelling to an unknown audience outside the comfort of my house. And it happened at my uncle's wedding when I was 3.5 years old. So that was the impact of all the stories that I got to hear. Stories continued being a part of my life. My mother used to feed food along with stories. She used to draw these eyes and expressions, and she used to take the end of her sari and put it around, and she used to make them the character, and she used to tell me the stories. Those finger stories were the best. And added to that, the perks of being in a joint family, I got to hear many personal narratives and stories from the others in the family. And I got to tell too. I used to share stories with my younger nephews and niece in the family. Time just flew. I graduated to become an engineer and I started doing a corporate job. Slowly, I shifted to training. And in every training session, I started my session with a story. Because the connect was more. And with each story, each session, it just went to reaffirm my belief that everyone, everywhere is either telling stories or listening to stories all the time. And after that, there was no looking back. I went ahead and told a lot of stories in libraries, government schools, orphanages. And whenever I finished my stories, the children used to come and sit on my lap. They used to give me colorful wrappers or toffees, flowers, or sometimes even written notes to show their love and appreciation. I felt a deep sense of gratitude to be able to do something highly impactful as this. I found a meaning and purpose in my life. At around this time, people who wished me well, who meant well, they told me not to leave my high-paying corporate job to pursue storytelling as a career. But deep in my heart, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And there was no dearth of inspiration for me because my mother and my father, they were my biggest motivators and I drew a lot of inspiration from them. My father had also left a very high-paying job to pick up the reins of the family business just because his father had asked him to. No fancy titles, no daily adventures, no recognition, and sometimes even no acknowledgement. But all that just did not seem to bother my dad. The dedication and the discipline with which he went to work day after day, come what may, and the way he faced the challenges, big and small, left me in complete awe. He was my motivator, my strength. My mother too. She lost her mother at a very young age. And my mother went to the hostel and she continued her studies. To the hostel, the farmers in and around brought them food grains, vegetables and fruits. My mother taught them how to read and write. She learnt cooking on her own. And she was ever grateful for all that she got in life, and she was very, very giving and sharing. After she finished her studies, she got married into this big family of my father. And she learned everything and she managed everything beautifully well. So often it leads me to think, if my mother and father can, why not me? After all, I am their daughter. I strongly believe that the stories that we hear and that we carry and that keep playing in our minds all the time greatly influence us and inspire us. These stories that play in our mind actually help us deal with situations better. When I am faced with a challenging situation, I get to understand things better and I am more well placed to deal with that. So these stories are something that I treasure, and in all these narratives I found hope. A hope that I have the power and means to work towards an outcome that I desire for. And it is with this hope that I chose to do shadow puppetry at an international storytelling festival last year. So, what's the big deal, you may ask? Shadow puppetry? I had zero knowledge about that. And then I started reading about it. Thanks to a friend of mine, she gave me the contacts of a shadow puppeteer. And then I got in touch with the person and I actually started understanding the entire process. I came to know that the artist usually learned by watching, and it took nearly 30 years to master the thing. And here I was with no knowledge of shadow puppetry, and all I had was just 3 months for the event. Now, what am I supposed to do? So getting the screen, the frame, the lights, the distance, the placement of the camera, they were all just too much for me. Nothing seemed to be working out for me. I felt terrible. I felt frustrated. And one day, I just sat at my table with my head on my forehead, looking out at the ground outside. I decided that I would call the people and say that I am not doing shadow puppetry. Just as I was staring into the vast emptiness outside, something touched my shoulder and fell down. I looked, it was a book from the shelf nearby, and that book was my storytelling notebook, the one in which I made notes of stories. I picked up the book and I saw what story it was. It was one of my favorite stories, the one which I just loved to tell. It was the story of the Tham Luang Nan Nong cave incident which happened in Thailand in June 2018. Yes, I'm sure you all must have heard of that incident too, the one which kept the entire world in its grip. 12 young members of a football team, along with their coach Ekapal, they went into this cave. They just went to celebrate their teammate's birthday. And as they were walking, nudging, cracking jokes, looking at the cave walls and having fun and going, they felt something under their feet. And they saw water entering the cave. Even as they saw the water entering the cave, the force with which the water came in was more. It was difficult for them to counter it and go outside the cave. So they started walking away from the water into the cave to avoid getting drowned. And they went fast. And they found a rocky ledge and they sat there. The 13 of them huddled together. The boys, they all started crying. Ekapal, their coach, hugged each of them and consoled each of them. He told them to do deep and slow breathing. He then told them to make a list of all the things they were grateful for in life. They discussed the strategies of the game in there. Ekapal also promised new football gear for the kids once they went out from the cave. Outside, the terrible storm and the incessant rains were making rescue operations very, very difficult. And inside, they all did not know even if it was day or night and how many days had passed. And after many, many days, 2 British divers found them and told about them to the world. And then the rescue operations happened, and after 17 days, the boys and the coach came out from the cave. The boys loved their coach and Ekapal loved them even more. He ensured that they all came out well and safe. Till the time they were in the cave, he took care of them so beautifully well and gave them so much hope. Had not Ekapal and the boys shown the world what perseverance was, what resilience was? This was a story that the world showed me that day. And I thought, here I was sitting in the comfort of my home with resources, with people to help me and support me, and I was going to give up. And that too, it was not a life and death situation. No. I got up, washed my face, tied my hair into a bun, and resumed work with a renewed energy. I started working on the issues in hand, one step at a time. And with the support of my husband and my daughter, I was able to pull off the shadow puppetry in great style. I was happy about that. When such inspiring stories come to us, don't you think they motivate us, they inspire us, and they drive us to perform? When we read the stories of Gandhiji or Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam or the Paramveer Chakra awardees or Nelson Mandela and many, many unsung heroes and heroines, they greatly inspire us. And what's more, when such stories of courage come from our family members, from our near and dear, from our friends, or from the people whom we know and we interact on a daily basis, the impact is much, much more. Ekapal and the boys in the cave ordeal, my parents carving out their life, and my shadow puppets getting to see the light of the day. What was common in all of these? In all these cases, no one waited for the magic to happen. In fact, they sculpted the magic moment after moment. Each story is unique. No act is big or small. Each one has their own challenges. Sometimes it could be a life and death situation. Sometimes it could be the anxiousness of going into unknown territories or trying out something new. Or sometimes it was just doing good on a daily basis. In all these cases, it is very true that we might not get success in the first attempt itself. It is at those instances that the stories of hope that one carries within actually makes the present situation bearable and also pushes us to do so that we can achieve what we strive for. Yes, the essence of all that I have been saying is beautifully captured in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 5. Uddaret atmanatmanam natmanam avasadhayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhuhu atmaiva ripuratmanah. It just means that everything is in the mind. The mind has the power to elevate our entire life by the stories and the thoughts within it. Our mind can be our friend or our enemy. So, what are the thoughts and stories inside your mind? I used gratitude and the stories coupled with my efforts to springboard to my future. What are the tools in your kitty that you would like to use to carve meaningful, beautiful future moments? My humble pranams and gratitude for listening to me. Thank you.